A story about a 14-year-old boy named Alexander who visited a Six Flags amusement park in Illinois on a school trip. So Alexander was asked to scan his thumb, his thumb into one of those biometric data capture system things, that we use sometimes. His thumbprint allowed him to get into the park and continue to be a season pass holder, right? The park hadn't got any consent from Alexander or his parents. He was 14 years old, after all. And they have no written policy made available to the public explaining what their process is for keeping or for destroying his very private biometric information. Michele Greenstein's been looking at this story today. It's got all the way to the Supreme Court, interestingly enough. So goes to the Supreme Court. What did they decide? Right.
So it went to the Illinois State Supreme Court. And this has to do with an interpretation of an Illinois state law called the Biometrics Identification Privacy Act. This was passed in 2008, and this imposes restrictions on private companies about how they can collect and retain and maybe even destroy any biometric identifiers that they take from you. Now, the Illinois Supreme Court ruled that you have standing to sue even if you cannot prove that you have an actual injury. So the Illinois state law says that any aggrieved person has standing to sue. This had to do with an interpretation of the term aggrieved. Now, what's interesting about this case is that the Illinois State Supreme Court is reading the law differently than other courts have in the past, including the Seventh Circuit, which is the federal court that covers Illinois. So the Seventh ruled that the term aggrieved denotes some kind of injury. Now, the Illinois Supreme Court says it does not. So we will probably see eventually this case go to the U.S. Supreme Court.
All right. So it bounces back and forth between all of these courts, and who knows who's influencing them. But let me ask maybe a more important question. All right. What is the prevalence of this? What is the possibility that this could be happening to me without my even knowing it, by the way?
Right. So that this is going to the U.S. Supreme Court is quite important because private companies are already on their way to using a range of technical tools, of course, in the name of increased revenue. We have Google developing 3D facial recognition. Apple already has their own Face ID. Facebook's artificial intelligence facial recognition software passed tests with near human level accuracy. And then we have things like Walgreens smart coolers that literally scan your face to learn more about their customers, and they monitor what your eye is drawn to. So, of course, this is all for increased profits, but eventually what we're going to have is everyone's fingerprints, iris, retina scans are going to be tied to every transaction they ever make. So, of course, there are a number of concerns here. One is that this is personal information. What could be more private, right? But even if you did trust these companies, this makes us very susceptible to hacks. And, of course, there's another concern, which is that subtle psychological messaging that that use of this technology gives us, especially to kids, that to gain access to knowledge or money, because there are payment systems that use biometric identifiers, food, travel, any sort of item or activity, you have to hand over your privacy. So what we're really seeing is the normalization of a cashless society and the normalization of the extinction of privacy.
And some of that may actually be good from the standpoint of how accessible and how easy it is to live our lives. Some of it, as you point out from the standpoint of privacy, is not good.
For sure.
And the bottom line is this, right? I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Nothing that involves our children should we be giving consent without our knowledge.
Exactly. And the bottom line is that there should be a public debate. We already know that the FBI has a database that involves over a third of the U.S. Adult population. In addition to the U.S., there are numerous countries with some sort of biometric identification grid that I know of. Let's take a look at this list of countries. This is an extensive list, and this is the only the countries that I was able to find today. So this is everything from passports, border security systems, some other form of ID cards, and what we're really seeing is that we are handing over our biological information, knowledge about our physical characteristics to these state actors, and whether or not we trust them or not. Let's say we totally trust the government to use this information only, to fight crime or to, normalize things. The fact is that this makes us very susceptible to hackers.
Oh, that's a good report. Well done. I'll tell you what, very complete. Thank you so much for sharing. This is information that we all need.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.